Monkey knew nothing about official matters, and it was fortunate that all he had to do was to mark his name on a list. For the rest, he and his subordinates ate their 3 meals, slept soundly at night, had no worries, but only perfect freedom and independence. When there was nothing else going on, he went round and made friends with the other denizens of heaven. He was careful to address the members of the Trinity as Venerable, and the 4 emperors as Majesty, but all the rest, planets, lunar mansions, spirits of the hours and days, he treated as equals. Today he wandered east, tomorrow rambled west. His goings and comings were unhampered as the passage of the clouds. One day at court, an immortal stepped forward and made the following petition. I submit that the sage equal of heaven has no duties to perform. He spends all his time going round and making friends. All the stars of heaven, high and low, are now his cronies. Trouble will come of it unless some way is found of employing his time. The Jade Emperor accordingly sent for Monkey, who arrived in high glee, asking, What promotion or reward has your Majesty sent for me to announce? I hear, said the Emperor, that you have nothing in particular to do, and I am going to give you a job. You are to look after the peach garden. I wish you to devote the greatest attention to this work. Monkey was in wild delight, and unable to wait for a moment, he rushed off to take over his new duties in the peach garden. Here he found a local spirit who cried out to him, Great sage, where are you going? To take charge of the peach garden, he said. I've been appointed by his Majesty. The spirit bowed low and called to hoe earth, draw water, peach tender, and leaf sweeper, the strong men who worked the garden, to come forward and kowtow to Monkey. How many trees are there? Monkey asked of the local spirit. 3,600, he said. On the outer side, 1,200 with inconspicuous flowers and small fruit. They ripen once in 3,000 years. Whoever eats them becomes a fairy, all wise. His limbs are strong and his body light. In the middle of the garden are 1,200 trees with double blossom and sweet fruit. They ripen once in 6,000 years. Whoever eats them can levitate at will and never grows old. At the back of the garden are 1,200 trees. The fruit has purple markings and the stones are pale yellow. They ripen once in 9,000 years. Whoever eats them outlasts heaven and earth, and is the compare of sun and moon. Monkey was delighted, and began at once inspecting the trees and listing the arbours and pagodas. Henceforward he amused himself only once a month, on the day of the full moon, but otherwise saw no friends and went nowhere. One day he saw that high up on some of the trees many of the peaches were ripe, and he made up his mind to eat them before anyone else got a chance. Unfortunately, he was closely watched by his followers, and to shake them off, he said, I'm feeling tired, and I'm going to take a short rest in the arbour. Go and wait for me outside the gates. When they had retired, he took off his court hat and robes, and scrambled up onto a high tree, and began to pluck the ripest and largest fruit he could see. Sitting astride a bough, he regaled himself to his heart's content, and then came down. He put on his hat and robes, and called to his followers to attend him, while he returned in state to his lodging. After a few days, he did the same thing again. One morning, Her Majesty the Queen of Heaven, having made up her mind to give a peach banquet, told the fairy maidens, red jacket, blue jacket, white jacket, black jacket, purple jacket, yellow jacket, and green jacket, to take their baskets and pick peaches in the peach garden. They found Monkey's followers barring the gate. We have come, they said, by command of Her Majesty, to pick peaches for a banquet.
Halt, my fairy beauties, said one of the guards. Things have changed since last year. This garden has been put in charge of the great sage equal of heaven, and we must get his permission before we can let you in.
Where is he? They asked.
He's feeling rather tired, a guardian spirit said, and is having a nap in the arbour.
Oh, very well then, they said. Go and look for him, for we must get to work at once. They consented to go and tell him, but found the arbour empty, save for Monkey's hat and robe. They began looking for him, but he was nowhere to be seen. The fact was that Monkey, after slipping away and eating several peaches, had changed himself into a little fellow 2 inches long, and was curled up asleep under a thick leaf high up on the tree. "We must carry out our orders," said the fairy maidens, "whether you find him or not. We can't go back empty-handed."
"Quite right, fairy beauties," said an officer. "We must not keep you waiting. Our master has been used to going about a great deal, and probably has gone to look up some of his old friends. Just you go and pick your peaches, and we'll tell him when he comes back."
So they went into the garden, and first they picked 3 baskets full from the trees in the near part of the garden, then 3 from the trees in the middle. But when they came to the trees at the back, they found nothing but snapped stalks. All the peaches had been taken. However, when they had looked about for some time, they did succeed in finding 1 solitary peach that was not quite ripe, hanging on a southward-facing bough. Blue Jacket pulled the bough towards her and picked the peach, then let go. This was the very bough where Monkey was sleeping in his diminutive form. The jerk awoke him, and rapidly changing himself back again, he cried out, "Where have you come from, monsters? And how comes it that you have the audacity to pick my peaches?" The terrified fairy maidens, with one accord, fell upon their knees, crying, "Great sage, don't be angry. We are not monsters. We are 7 fairy maidens sent by the Queen of Heaven to pick peaches for her peach banquet. When we came to the gate, we found your officers on guard. They looked everywhere for you, but couldn't find you. We were afraid to keep Her Majesty waiting. So, as you could not be found, we came in and began to pick. We beseech you to forgive us." Monkey became all affability. "Rise from your knees, fairies," he said. "Tell me now, who is invited to this banquet?" "It is an official banquet," they said, "and certain deities are invited as a matter of course. The Buddha of the Western Heaven will be there, and the Bodhisattvas, and the Lohans, Kuan Yin, too, and all the immortals of the 10 islands. Then there will be the 5 spirits of the pole star, the emperors of the 4 quarters, the gods and immortals of the seas and hills. All of them will come to the banquet." "Shall I be asked?" inquired Monkey. "I haven't heard it suggested," one of them said. "But I am the great sage, equal of heaven," said Monkey. "I don't see why I shouldn't be invited." "We can only tell you who is invited according to the rules," they said. "What will be done this time, we don't know." "Quite right, my dears," said Monkey. "I'm not blaming you. Just you wait here while I go off and scout round a little to see whether I'm to be invited or not to be invited." Dear Monkey, he recited a magic formula and cried to the maidens, "Stay, stay, stay." This was a fixing magic, and the fairies, in consequence of it, remained rooted to the spot where they stood. Monkey set off on his magic cloud, sailed clear of the garden, and hastened towards the pool of green jade. On the way, he ran straight into the red-legged immortal. At once he thought of a plan by which he might trick the immortal and attend the feast himself. "Old Wisdom, where are you going?" he asked.
"I've been invited to the peach banquet," the immortal answered.
"Oh, you probably haven't heard," said Monkey. "I've been asked by the Jade Emperor, because I get about so fast on my cloud, to go round to all guests and tell them there's going to be a rehearsal of ceremonies first in the Hall of Penetrating Light." The immortal was a guileless soul and was completely taken in.
"Other years we've always had the rehearsal at the same place as the banquet," he said.
However, I'm much obliged. And turning his cloud, he made towards the hall of penetrating light. Then, reciting a spell, Monkey changed himself into the exact image of the red-legged immortal and went straight to the green jade pool. After a little while he came to the treasure tower and stepped softly in. Everything was set out for the feast, but no one had yet arrived. Monkey was gazing at the scene when suddenly a smell of brewing assaulted him. He turned round, and in a gallery on the right he saw a number of fairy ministrants making wine. Some were carrying the mashed grain, others bringing water. Boys were keeping up the fire, jugs were being washed, and jars swept. The wine that had already been made was exhaling a delicious perfume. Monkey's mouth watered, and he would have gone and drunk some at once, had it not been for the presence of all these servants. He was obliged to employ his magic powers. Pulling out a handful of his finest down, he tossed it into his mouth and bit it into ever smaller pieces. Then he spat it out, crying, "Change!" And the hairs changed into so many drowsy insects, which flew towards the servants and settled on their cheeks. Look at them! How their hands fall to their sides, and their heads sink down, their eyes close, and they fall asleep. Monkey then snatched up some of the finest viands, the daintiest dishes, ran into the gallery, seized a jug, tilted a jar, set to, and drank deeply. When he had been drinking for some time and was already pretty drunk, he thought to himself,
Bad. The guests will soon be arriving, and I shall get into trouble. It's no good staying here. I had better go and have a sleep in my own quarters.
Dear Monkey, staggering and blundering along, very much the worse for liquor, he lost his way, and instead of getting home, he arrived at the Tushita Palace. Suddenly he came to himself and realized where he was. "Why, this is where Lao Tzu lives," he said to himself. "How did I get here? Well, I've always wanted to meet that old man, and have never had the chance. It wouldn't be a bad idea, as I am here, to go and have a look at him." So he tidied his clothes and went in. But there were no signs of Lao Tzu or anyone else. Actually, Lao Tzu was in an upper room with Dipankara, Buddha of the past, expounding the way to an audience of immortal officers, pages, and officials. Monkey went straight to the alchemical laboratory. There was no one there, but a brazier at one side of the hearth was burning with 5 gourds arranged round it, and in these gourds was finished elixir. "This," said Monkey to himself in high glee, "is the highest treasure of the immortals. Since my illumination, I have solved the secret of the identity of inside and outside. I was on the verge of producing a little elixir on my own account when, unexpectedly, I came home and was busy with other things. I think I'll try a pill or two." He tilted the gourds and ate up the contents for all the world as if it had been a dish of fried beans. After a while, full of elixir and the effects of the wine now wearing off, he again took stock of the situation and said to himself, Bad. This escapade of mine is even more unfortunate than the last. If the Jade Emperor gets to hear of it, I am lost. Run! I was better off as a king in the world below." He rushed out of the Tushita Palace, not going his usual way, but making for the western gate of heaven. Here he used a magic that made him invisible, and lowered his cloud till he was back on the borders of the mountain of flowers and fruit. A flash of banners and gleam of spears told him that his followers were practicing the arts of war. "Little ones, I'm here!" he cried aloud. They all flung down their weapons and fell upon their knees. "Great sage," they said, "you're very neglectful of your subjects. Fancy going off this while without a thought about what becomes of us." However, they made a great banquet to welcome him, and brought him a huge stone bowl full of date wine. After drinking a mouthful, he made a very wry face, saying, "What horrible stuff! I can't drink this." 2 of his generals rushed forward. "Great sage, he said. No doubt in the palace of heaven you have been drinking the wine of the immortals, and for that reason cannot stomach this date wine. But the proverb says, there is no water like home water. And it goes on, there are no folk like home folk, said Monkey. When I was enjoying myself at the Palace of Green Jade, I saw flagon after flagon of jade juice and ruby extract, such as you have never in your lives tasted. I'll go back and steal some for you, half a cup each, and you'll none of you ever grow old. All the monkeys were delighted, and the sage went out to the cave door, turned his somersault, and made himself invisible, and returned to heaven. He found the makers of wine, carriers of dregs and water, and lighters of fire, all still snoring heavily. Taking a couple of large flagons, one under each arm, and two more, one in each hand, he turned his cloud and came back. A great assembly of monkeys was held, and each got a cupful or two. There was a rapturous scene. Meanwhile, the 7 fairy maidens remained spellbound a whole day. When at last they could move, they took up their flower baskets, and going back to the Queen of Heaven, they told her that the sage equal of heaven had held them back by magic, and that was why they were so late. "How many peaches did you pick?" she asked. "We got 2 baskets of small peaches and 3 baskets of middling peaches, but when we came to the back of the garden, we found that half the big peaches were already gone. It seems that the great sage has eaten them. While he was being looked for, he suddenly appeared in our midst, made a fearful scene, and asked who had been invited to the banquet. We told him about the usual arrangements for such feasts, whereupon he bound us by a spell, and went off we didn't know where. We've only just managed to break the spell and come back." The Queen of Heaven went straight to the Jade Emperor, and was telling him what had happened, when a crowd of wine-makers and other celestial officials came pouring in, announcing that someone had made a mess of all the arrangements for the banquet, stolen the wine, and eaten up all the dainties. At this moment the supreme patriarch of Teo was announced. The emperor and his consort went out to meet him.
"I am sorry to have to report to your majesties,"
said Lao Tzu,
"that the elixir which I was concocting for the next cinema banquet has been stolen."
Presently one of Monkey's celestial attendants arrived, and reported that the great sage had been missing since the day before, and no one knew what had become of him. The Jade Emperor's suspicions were now confirmed. At this point the red-legged immortal appeared before the throne.
"I was on my way to the banquet," he said, "in response to Her Majesty's invitation, when I met the great sage equal of heaven, who told me that he'd been asked to inform all guests that they were to go first to the Hall of Penetrating Light and rehearse the ceremonies of the banquet. I did as he said, but when I got there I saw no sign of Your Majesty's having arrived, and thought it better to come at once to court."
The Jade Emperor was more outraged and astonished than ever.
"Sir, the rogue counterfeits imperial orders and deceives my ministers," he exclaimed. "Tell the celestial detective to get on to his tracks at once."
After an exhaustive inquiry, the detective reported that the disturbances in heaven had been caused by the great sage. The Jade Emperor then commanded the kings of the 4 quarters, and Vaisravana and his son, to marshal the 28 lunar mansions, the 9 planets, the 12 hours, and all the stars, together with 100,000 heavenly soldiers, and draw a cordon round the mountain of flowers and fruit, so that Monkey should have no escape. When this had been done, the 9 planets were called upon to issue the challenge. Monkey and his generals were drinking wine from heaven, when he was told that the planets were at the door. He refused to worry himself. "If today you have wine, get drunk today. Pay no heed to what is at the door, be it good or ill," he quoted. A small imp now scurried up, saying that these 9 fierce deities were raging at the gate, flinging battle taunts. Monkey only laughed. "Don't pay any attention to them," he said. "Poetry and wine are enough to make this day glad. High deeds must take their turn. Glory can afford to wait." But while he was speaking, another imp rushed in. "Father," he cried, "those 9 fierce fairies have broken down the gates and are advancing to the attack." "Have those scoundrels no manners?" cried Monkey. "I've never interfered with them. Why should they come here worrying me?" And he ordered the one-horned ogre to lead out the kings of the 72 caves to battle, while he and his 4 generals came in the rear. The ogre and his followers could get no further than the iron bridge. Here the planets barred their path. "Make way!" cried Monkey, and he strode through their midst, brandishing his cudgel. The planets dared not oppose him and beat a hasty retreat. When they had reformed their ranks a little way back, their leader cried, "Insensate groom! What crime is there that you have not committed? You have stolen peaches and stolen wine, upset the high feast, purloined Lao Tzu's elixir, and then taken more wine for your banquet here. You have piled up sin upon sin. Do you not realize what you have done?" "Quite true," said Monkey. "All quite true. What are you going to do about it?"
"We have been sent by the Jade Emperor," they said, "to receive your submission. If you surrender at once, you will be spared. If not, we shall stamp on your mountain till it is flat and smash your cave to bits."
"And where are you going to get the strength from?" asked Monkey, "to do that? How dare you talk such nonsense? Stand your ground and take old Monkey's cudgel." The planets leapt at him, but Monkey was no whit afraid. He brandished his cudgel, parrying here and thrusting there, till the planets were quite worn out, and one by one slunk away, trailing their weapons after them to seek refuge in their tents.
"That Monkey King is a valiant fighter indeed,"
they said to Vaisravana. "We were unable to overcome him and had to give up the fight." The kings of the 4 quarters and the 28 lunar mansions were then ordered to advance. But Monkey did not quail, but bade the one-horned ogre, the kings of the 72 caves, and his 4 valiant generals to take their stand outside the cave. The combat began at dawn, and lasted till the sun sank behind the western hills. The one-horned ogre and all the kings of the 72 caves were captured and carried away. Only the 4 generals and the monkeys escaped and hid in the far recesses of the cave. But Monkey, all alone, cudgel in hand, held back the kings of the 4 quarters, Vaisravana and Netha, warring with them halfway up the sky. At last, seeing that dusk was at hand, he plucked a handful of his hairs, tossed them into his mouth, chewed them up small, and spat them out, crying, "Change!" Whereupon they changed into thousands of monkeys, each armed with a metal-plated cudgel. They drove back Vaisravana, Netha, and the 4 kings. Then Monkey, at last victorious, withdrew the hairs and returned to his cave. At the iron bridge he was met by the 4 generals and all the host of monkeys. On seeing him they wailed 3 times and laughed hee-hee-ho-ho 3 times. "What made you wail 3 times and laugh 3 times when you saw me?" asked Monkey. "We wailed," they said, "because the one-horned ogre and the 72 kings were defeated and captured, and because we had to fly for our lives. We laugh with joy because you have come back victorious and unharmed." "There is always defeat in victory, and victory in defeat," said Monkey. "There is an old saying, 'To slay 10,000 costs 3,000. In this case, the chieftains captured were all tigers, leopards, wolves, and the like. Not one of our monkey kind was taken or hurt, so there is nothing to worry about. By the art of self-division, I have put them to flight. But it is certain that they have encamped at the foot of our mountain. We must keep strict guard and husband our strength. Tomorrow you shall see me use my most potent magic against these divinities and avenge the captured." Then the 4 generals and all the monkeys drank a cup or 2 of date wine and went quietly to sleep.
After the retreat of the kings of the four quarters, all the celestial warriors told of their deeds. Some had captured tigers and leopards, some deer, some wolves and foxes, but not one of them could boast that he had taken a monkey. They did indeed, as Monkey had foretold, set up a camp, surrounding it with a great palisade. Here the meritorious were rewarded, and the troops who formed the cordon round the caves were instructed to give warning by bell or cry, and be ready for the great battle that would begin at dawn. How they fared after day broke, you will hear in the next chapter. So the great sage quietly rested, while the hosts of heaven encompassed him. Meanwhile, the great compassionate Bodhisattva Kuan Yin had come at the invitation of the Queen of Heaven to attend the great feast. With her she brought her chief disciple, Hui Yen, and on arriving they were astounded to find the banqueting halls in utter desolation and confusion. The couches were broken or pushed aside, and although there were a few immortals, they had not attempted to take their places, but were standing about in noisy groups, protesting and disputing. After saluting the Bodhisattva, they told her the whole story of what had occurred. "If there is no banquet and no drinks are going," she said, "you had better all come with me to see the Jade Emperor." On the way they met the red-legged immortal and others, who told them that a heavenly army had been sent to arrest the culprit, but had not yet returned. "I should like to see the Emperor," said Kuan Yin. "I must trouble you to announce my arrival." Lao Tzu was with the Emperor, and the Queen of Heaven in attendance behind the throne. "What about the peach banquet?" Kuan Yin asked after the customary greetings had been exchanged.
"It has always been such fun, year after year," said the Emperor. "It is terribly disappointing that this year everything has been upset by that terrible ape. I have sent 100,000 soldiers to pen him in, but the whole day has passed without news, and I don't know whether they've been successful." "I think you had better go down quickly to the mountain of flowers and fruit," said the Bodhisattva to her disciple Hui Yin, "and investigate the military situation. If hostilities are actually in progress, you can give a hand. In any case, let us know exactly how things stand." When he arrived, he found a close cordon, many soldiers deep, with sentries on watch at every exit. The mountain was completely surrounded, and escape impossible. Day was just breaking when Hui Yen, who was the second son of Vajrayana and had been called Prince Moksha before his conversion, was shown into his father's tent. "Where do you come from, my son?" asked Vajrayana. "I have been sent to see how things are going on," he said. "I camped here yesterday," said Vajrayana, "and I sent the 9 planets as challengers, but they were unable to stand up against this rogue's magic and returned discomfited. Then I led an army myself, and he marshalled his followers. We were about 100,000 men, and fought with him till dusk, when he used some magic method of self-multiplication, and we had to withdraw. On examining our booty, we found we had captured a certain number of tigers, wolves, leopards, and other animals, but not a single monkey. Today, the fight has not yet begun." While they were speaking, a messenger rushed in and announced that the great sage and all his host of monkeys were outside shouting their battle cries. The kings of the four quarters, Vajrayana and his son Netha, had just agreed to go out and meet him, when Hui Yen said, "Father, I was sent by the Bodhisattva to obtain information, but she said that if hostilities were in progress, I was to lend a hand. I confess I should like to go and have a look at this great sage of yours." "My son," said Vajrayana, "you cannot have studied with the Bodhisattva for so many years without having learned some form of magic. Don't forget to put it into practice." "Dear Prince,"
Girding up his embroidered cloak and brandishing his iron cudgel with both hands, he rushed out to the camp gate, crying in a loud voice, "Which of you is the great sage equal of heaven?" Monkey held up his wishing staff and answered, "I am he. Who are you that you so rashly dare inquire for me?" Hui Yen said, "I am Vajravana's second son, Moksha. Now I am pupil and defender of the Bodhisattva Kuan Yin, and stand before her throne. My name in religion is Hui Yen." "What then are you doing here?" asked Monkey. "I was sent," said he, to get news of the battle, and as they are having so much trouble with you, I have come myself to arrest you." "How dare you talk so big?" said Monkey. "Stand your ground and taste old Monkey's cudgel." Moksha was not at all afraid, but advanced, flourishing his iron cudgel. These two stood face to face at the foot of the mountain outside the gate of the camp. It was a grand fight. They closed 50 or 60 times, till at last Hui Yen's arms and shoulders were aching. He could resist no more, and fled from the battlefield. Monkey, too, withdrew his monkey troops and bade them rest outside the cave. Moksha, still gasping and panting, tottered into his father's camp. "It's only too true," he said. "That great sage is indeed the most formidable of magicians. I could do nothing with him, and have had to come back, leaving him in possession of the field." Vajravana was very astonished. He saw nothing for it but to write out an appeal for further help. This he entrusted to the demon king Mahabali and his son Moksha, who at once passed through the cordon and soared to heaven. "How are you people down below getting on?" asked Kuan Yin. "My father told me," said Hui Yen, "that in the first day's battle they captured a number of tigers, leopards, wolves, and other animals, but not a single monkey. Soon after I arrived, the battle began again, and I closed with the great sage some 50 or 60 times, but could not get the better of him, and was obliged to retire to the camp. My father then sent the demon king Mahabali and me to ask for help." The Bodhisattva Kuan Yin bowed her head and reflected. When the Jade Emperor opened Vajravana's missive and saw that it contained an appeal for help, he said, laughing, "This is preposterous. Am I to believe that a single monkey spirit is so powerful that 100,000 heavenly troops cannot deal with him? Vajravana says that he must have help, but I don't know what troops he expects me to send." Before he had finished speaking, Kuan Yin pressed together the palms of her hands and said, "Your Majesty need not worry. I know of a divinity who can certainly catch this monkey." "Whom do you mean?" asked the Emperor. "Your nephew, the magician Erlang," she said. "He lives at the mouth of the River of Libations, and there receives the incense that is burnt in the world below. In old days he once overcame 6 ogres. He has his brothers with him, and 1,000 plant-headed deities of very great magical powers. Though he would not come if ordered to, he would listen to an appeal. If you send an appeal to him for troops, with his assistance we could effect a capture." The demon king Mahabali was sent as messenger, and in less than half an hour the cloud he rode on reached Erlang's temple. He came out with his brothers, and after burning incense read the appeal.
"Let the heavenly messenger go back,"
he said,
"and announce that I will help to the utmost of my power."
Then he called together his brothers and said,
"The Jade Emperor has just asked us to go to the mountain of flowers and fruit and receive the submission of a troublesome monkey. Let's be off."
The brothers were delighted, and they at once marshalled the divinities in their charge. The whole temple set out, falcon on wrist, or leading their dogs, bow in hand, carried by a wild magic wind. In a trice they had crossed the eastern ocean and reached the mountain of flowers and fruit. Having announced their mission, they were led through the cordon and shown into the camp. They asked how matters stood.
"I shall certainly have to try a transformation,"
Erlang said.
Keep the cordon closely drawn, but do not worry about what goes on overhead. If I am getting the worst of it, do not come to my assistance. My brothers will look after me. If I conquer him, do not try to bind him, but leave that to my brothers. All I ask is that Vase Ravana should use an imp-reflecting mirror, standing with it halfway up the sky. If he tries to run away and hide, watch his reflection in the mirror, so that we don't lose sight of him.
The heavenly kings then took up their places, and Erlang and his brothers went out to give the challenge, telling their fellows to form a circle, keeping their falcons tethered and their dogs on leash. When he reached the door of the cave, Erlang found a host of monkeys drawn up in coiling dragon formation. In their midst was a banner with "The Great Sage Equal of Heaven" inscribed upon it.
How dare that cursed monster call himself Equal of Heaven?
Snarled Erlang.
Don't worry about that, said the brothers, but go and challenge him at once.
When the small monkeys at the entrance to the camp saw Erlang coming, they scuttled inside and made their report. Monkey seized his metal-bound cudgel, donned his golden breastplate, put on his cloud-treading shoes and golden cap, and rushed out to the gate, glaring about him.
"What little captain are you, and where do you hail from?" shouted Monkey, "that you dare come here and challenge me to battle? Have you eyes with no eyeballs, that you fail to know me?"
shouted Erlang.
"I am the Jade Emperor's nephew. I have come now, by His Majesty's command, to arrest you, rebellious groom ape that you are. Your hour has come."
"I remember," said Monkey, "that some years ago the Emperor's sisters fell in love with a mortal of the world below, became his consort, and had a son by him, who is said to have split the Peach Mountain with his axe. Are you he? I'm half-minded to give you a bit of my mind, but you are not worth it. I should be sorry to strike you, for one blow of mine would be the end of you. Go back where you came from, little fellow, and tell the 4 kings of heaven to come instead." Erlang was furious.
"Keep a civil tongue in your head,"
he cried,
"and taste my blade."
Monkey dodged aside and swiftly, raising his cudgel, struck in his turn. They closed over 300 times without reaching a decision. Erlang exerted all his magic power, shook himself hard, and changed into a giant figure 100,000 feet high. His 2 arms, each holding aloft a magic trident, were like the peaks that crown Mount Hua. His face was blue, and his teeth stuck far out. The hair on his head was scarlet, and his expression malignant beyond words. This terrible apparition advanced upon Monkey, aiming a blow straight down upon his head. But Monkey, also using his magic powers, changed himself into an exact counterpart of Erlang, save that he held above him a single gigantic cudgel, like the solitary pillar that towers above Mount Kuan Lun. And with this he fended off Erlang's blow. But Monkey's generals were completely discomfited by the giant apparition, and their hands began to tremble so much that they could not wave their banners. His other officers were in panic and could not use their swords. At a word from the brothers, the plant-headed divinities rushed in, letting loose their falcons and dogs, and bow in hand all charged into the fray. Alas, Monkey's 4 generals fled, and 2,000 or 3,000 of the creatures they commanded were captured. The monkeys threw down their weapons and rushed, screaming, some up the mountain, some into the cave. It was just as when a cat at night disturbs roosting birds, and their panic fills the starry sky. When Monkey saw his followers scatter, his heart fluttered. He abandoned his giant form and fled as fast as his feet could carry him. Erlang strode after him with huge steps, crying,
"Where are you off to? Come back this minute, and I will spare your life."
But Monkey fled faster than ever to his cave, where he ran straight into the brothers.
"Wretched monkey, where are you running to?" they cried. Monkey, trembling in every limb, hastily turned his cudgel into an embroidery needle, and hiding it about his person, changed himself into a fish, and slipped into the stream. Rushing down to the bank, ere long could see nothing of him. "This simian," he said, "has suddenly changed himself into a fish, and hidden under the water. I must change myself too if I am to catch him." So he changed himself into a cormorant, and skimmed hither and thither over the stream. Monkey, looking up out of the water, suddenly saw a bird hovering above. It was like a blue kite, but its plumage was not blue. It was like a heron, but had no tuft on its head. It was like a crane, but its feet were not red. "I'll be bound that's Erlang, looking for me." He released a few bubbles and swam swiftly away. "That fish letting bubbles," said Erlang to himself, "is like a carp, but its tail is not red. It's like a tench, but there are no patterns on its scales. It is like a blackfish, but there are no stars on its head. It is like a bream, but there are no bristles on its gills. Why did it make off like that when it saw me? I'll be bound it's Monkey, who has changed himself into a fish." And swooping down, he opened his beak and snapped at him. Monkey whisked out of the water and changed himself into a freckled bustard, standing all alone on the bank. Seeing that he had reached the lowest possible stage in transformation, for the freckled bustard is the lowest and most promiscuous of creatures, mating at hazard with any bird that comes its way, Erlang did not deign to close with him, but returned to his true form, and fetching his sling, shot a pellet that sent Monkey rolling. Taking advantage of his opportunity, Monkey rolled and rolled down the mountainside, and when he was out of sight, changed himself into a wayside shrine. His mouth wide open was the door opening, his teeth he turned into door flaps, his tongue into the guardian Bodhisattva. His two eyes were the two round windows. He didn't quite know what to do with his tail, but sticking up straight behind, it looked like a flagpole. When Erlang arrived at the bottom of the slope, he expected to find the bustard that he had toppled over, but instead he only found a small shrine. Examining it closely, he noticed the flagpole sticking up behind, and laughing, said, "That's Monkey, that is. He's trying his tricks on me again. I've seen many shrines, but never one with a flagpole sticking up behind. No doubt about it, this animal is playing one of his games. He hopes to lure me up close to him, and then he will bite me. He won't get me that way. I'll clench my fist and bang in the windows first. Afterwards I'll kick down the doors." When Monkey heard this, he was horrified. "That's a bit too much," he said to himself. "The doors are my teeth, and the windows are my eyes. If he kicks my teeth and bangs my eyes, that won't be nice." So saying, he made a tiger spring and disappeared into the sky. Erlang was just getting tired of the vain pursuit when his brothers arrived. "Well, have you caught the great sage?" they asked. "He has just been trying to dodge me," said Erlang, "by turning into a shrine. I was just going to hit his windows and kick down his doors when he suddenly disappeared. It's a queer business." They all began peering helplessly about in every direction, but could find nothing. "You stay here and keep a lookout," said Erlang, "while I go up and search for him." He mounted the clouds, and halfway up the sky came across Ravana, who was holding the magic mirror, his son at his side. "Have you seen the Monkey King?" he asked. "He's not been up here," said Ravana. "I can see him in my mirror, you know." When Erlang had told him about the capture of the lesser monkeys and the great sage's repeated transformations, he added, "Then he changed into a shrine, and when I hit at him, he suddenly disappeared." Ravana looked in his mirror and burst out laughing. "Make haste, Erlang, make haste,"
he cried. "That monkey has made himself invisible, decamped, and made straight for your river of libations." When Erlang heard this, he picked up his magic lance and fled towards the river of libation as fast as he could. Now, as soon as Monkey reached the river, he changed himself into the exact image of Erlang and went straight into Erlang's shrine. The guardian demons of the shrine could not tell the difference and bowed low as he came in. He examined the incense smoke and was looking at the votive paintings round the walls when someone came and announced, "Another Erlang has arrived." The guarding deities rushed out and could hardly believe their eyes.
"Has a creature calling himself the great sage, equal of heaven, been here?"
the real Erlang asked. "We've seen nothing of any great sage," they said. "But there's another holy Erlang inside examining the incense smoke." He rushed in, and as soon as Monkey saw him, he changed into his true form and said, "Erlang, I don't mind telling you, the surname of that shrine was Sun." Erlang raised his three-pronged, two-bladed magic lance and struck at Monkey's cheek. Monkey dodged, and the two of them, cursing and fighting, edged towards the shrine gate and out into the mists and clouds, struggling as they went, till at last Monkey was driven to the mountain of flowers and fruit where the kings of the four quarters were keeping straight guard. The brothers came to meet Erlang and surrounded Monkey, pressing about him on every side. Meanwhile, in heaven, everyone was wondering why a whole day had passed without any news from Erlang. "Would your Majesty," asked Kuan Yin, "permit me and the Patriarch of Teo to go down in person and see how things are going on?"
"Not a bad idea,"
said the Jade Emperor, and in the end he and the Queen of Heaven, as well as Kuan Yin and Lao Tzu, all went to the southern gate of heaven and looked out. They saw the great cordon of heavenly troops and Vaisravana standing halfway up the sky holding a mirror, while Erlang and his brothers pressed round Monkey, tussling fiercely with him. "That Erlang whom I proposed hasn't done so badly," said Kuan Yin. "He has hemmed the great sage in, but he has not yet taken him prisoner. With a little help, I think he could manage it."
"What weapon do you propose to use? How are you going to help him?"
asked Lao Tzu. "I shall throw my vase and willow spray down onto his head," said Kuan Yin. "That won't kill him, but it will make him lose his balance, and Erlang will easily be able to catch him."
"Your vase," said Lao Tzu, "is made of porcelain. If it fell in just the right place, it might be all right, but if it misses his head and falls on his iron cudgel, it will get broken. You had better leave him to me."
"Have you got a weapon?" asked Kuan Yin.
"I certainly have,"
said Lao Tzu, and he produced from his sleeve a magic snare.
"This,"
said he,
"is called the diamond snare. In old days, when I left China, converted the barbarians of the West, and became a god, I owed my success entirely to this snare. It comes in handy for keeping off all manner of dangers. Let me throw it down onto him."
Standing at the gate of heaven, he cast his snare, and it went rippling down straight onto Monkey's head. Monkey was busy warring with Erlang and his brothers, and did not notice that a weapon was falling upon him out of the sky. It hit him just on the crown of his head and toppled him over. He scrambled to his feet and fled, pursued by Erlang's dogs, who went for his calves, so that he stumbled again. Lying on the ground, he cursed, saying, "This has done for me. Why can't you go and trip up your own master instead of coming and biting old Monkey's legs?" He twisted and turned, but could not rise, for the brothers were holding him down. Soon they had bound him tightly with ropes and severed his lute bone with a knife, so that he could not
transform himself. Lao Tzu drew in his snare and begged the Emperor, Kuan Yin, the Queen of Heaven, and all the immortals to go back to the palace. On earth below, the kings of the four quarters and Ravana and all the heavenly host sheathed their swords and plucked up their palisades. Then they came up to Erlang and congratulated him, saying, "We owe this victory to you."
"Not at all,"
said Erlang.
"It was entirely due to the founder of Teo and the gallant performance of the heavenly contingent. I can claim no credit at all."
"Elder brother," said the brothers of Erlang, "you have said enough. What we must do now is to hoist this fellow up to heaven and get a ruling from the Jade Emperor as to how he is to be disposed of."
"Brothers,"
said Erlang,
"you are not on the roll of immortals and cannot appear before the Emperor. Heavenly troops must be told to carry him up, and Ravana and I will go up and report. The rest of you had better search the mountain, and when you can report that all is clear, come to the river of libations and let me know. Meanwhile, I will claim the reward due for my services and then come back to make merry with you."
The brothers bowed their assent. Erlang mounted the clouds, chanting songs of victory, and made his way to heaven. Here he sent in a message, saying,
"The great sage has been captured by the horse of heaven, and I have come to receive your instructions."
The Jade Emperor accordingly told the Demon King Mahabali and a contingent of heavenly troops to hoist Monkey up and bring him to the executioner's block, where he was to be cut into small pieces. If you do not know what now became of this Monkey King, listen to what is told in the next chapter.